Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining another webinar that we at Chonex are hosting with some of our illustrious advisors as we continue to share insights on regenerative agriculture, biofertilizers, and really the shift in agriculture that is currently underway across the country and if not the world. We're excited to have Pam Marrone, Dr. Pam Marrone here sharing her insights. Pam is a really world-renowned expert in this space. She's started multiple companies in this space, has hundreds of patents here, and advises dozens of companies in this important field, including us at Chonex. We've learned a ton from Pam over the years and have taken a lot of most of the advice. We don't get all of it right to heart. Pam is an incredible thinker and thought partner, as well as advisor. I can say that firmly. So we've asked Pam to come and share her insights on the biofertilizer market. This is a session to learn as much as anything else. And we're excited to have Pam. So with that, I can hand it over to you, Pam, if you want to take it from here. And
Sure.
I think you can see the slides. And I'll say one last thing again. If you do have questions that come up, you can post them in the chat. I'll watch that and moderate that at the end. Or at the end, you can come off mute and we'll save time for questions. So,
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate being able to do this. And I give my thoughts about what's happening in the biologicals, especially the biofertilizer market. So I always start big. And why? The big picture, because we need to reduce the footprint of agriculture and farm more sustainably. And especially since we're talking about biofertilizers and regenerative ag, most of the topsoil around the world is degraded. And despite the use of all the chemicals we use, we still have huge unmet needs and big needs in the market for soil regeneration as well as pest management. So what are we talking about here with biologicals? I'll start with the basics. So there's three categories, and it's biocontrol. Also, you'll see the name biopesticides or bioprotection. See all of those. Usually it's biopesticides in the US and biocontrol outside the US, but bioprotection is the newer term we're trying to, as an industry, to use. And that's regulated by the EPA and each country around the world. And then you have biostimulants, which are for crop enhancement and stress reduction. And I'll talk more about the definition of that. There's a tremendous overlap between biofertilizers and biostimulants. Biofertilizers are different from biostimulants in that they actually provide nutrition for the plant, NPK, micronutrients, et cetera. But they also have biostimulant activity, which I'll talk about, which would be reducing stress, enhancing the crop, increasing yields. And those are regulated by the state, but there is a national biostimulant standard pending, which I will talk about. So just so we know, sulfur, copper, pyrethrum, spinosad, these are natural materials, but they're not biological pesticides. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's registered as a biological. It has to have certain criteria in order to actually be a biopesticide and regulated as a biopesticide versus a chemical. So why is the market growing so fast? So the market is growing I'll get back to that. It's growing at double digits. And so Shane Thomas, if you haven't subscribed to Upstream Insights, it's a newsletter that comes out, a free and also a paid version, comes out every Sunday. And he calculated that the rate at which biologicals are growing, they'll cross over with chemicals by just past 2040. So you ought to care about biologicals because of the fact that it's going to be a very significant segment, and already is, but it's still a small part of the whole total pie, but it's going to cross over at some point. So, and why? Why is it growing so fast? Well, when you incorporate biologicals into a program with tools that the farmer already uses, they could be chemical pesticides or chemical fertilizers or reductions of chemical fertilizers or rotations with chemicals for pest management or tank mixtures. The growers nearly always see a higher return on investment than their chemical-only programs. Not everybody believes this when I say this, but I've had data from decades of work and from my companies as well as other companies showing the increased ROI. And Chonex is a company that has done the work and also shows that grower ROI in terms of yield and fertilizer reduction as well. I have in my previous company had the first ever study that showed the ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by switching to biologicals in up to 90%, 80 to 90%. And then, of course, the most recent, it's not a recent thing for regenerative farmers or organic farmers who have been paying attention to their soil health forever. But for conventional farmers, it is a relatively recent phenomenon of being able to really change practices to enhance soil health, which then leads to higher plant health and higher yields and quality. We also have a lot of new tools today, which I'll talk about some of them, including artificial intelligence and why that's exciting for today's. And then, of course, we have the fundamentals of why what the benefits of biologicals, they're faster to develop and their safety. So the biofertilizer market is dominated by legumes and field crops. And that's because a biofertilizer is a nitrogen-fixing bacterium, typically in the Brady rhizobium category or rhizobium category, that is for soybeans. And so that's dominated the biofertilizer market for quite some time. However, there's new strains and bacteria coming in, bacillus, and also corn nitrogen fixers, and those are coming in now and growing rapidly. So there's a lot of new companies, particularly targeting nitrogen fixation for corn, non-leguminous crops. And so we have a number of types of bacteria, gene-edited Klebsiella from Pivot Bio, Gluconocidobacter from Azotic, and other companies such as Bioconsortia. And Switch Bioworks is engineering, whereas Pivot Bios is gene-edited and Bioconsortia is geo-edited. Switch Bioworks is engineering microbes for nitrogen fixation, and Azotics is naturally occurring. So we have a whole mix of these things on the market or coming on the market. And then we've got some new companies that are focusing on engineering microbes, colonizing microbes for phosphorus uptake as well as biocontrol, like Quorum Bio and Robigo. It's crowded. Okay, so there's a lot of companies. This is a map of biological companies, and we kind of got exhausted at 2,100 companies. And some folks complain that they're not on this map. That's because it just is mind-boggling how many biological companies there are. So this is biocontrol, biostimulant, and biofertilizer. In 2024, the mixing bowl put together just the biocontrol, and that in itself is large. But when you add in the biostimulant and biofertilizer, which are more lightly regulated, it's astonishing. So I have some advice of how to sort through these companies and the technologies. If you're a farmer or an agronomist and advising a farmer, how you can make sense of this whole thing. And I have some advice coming on that. But there's a new one that's just popped up called Ag List. They're creating a Yelp for biologicals, and the companies can pay to post their products on Ag List. And then if there's good testimonials, assume there's good testimonials about the products, the farmers can those testimonials from an agronomist, farmer, or a university person can be posted along with the products on there. So I haven't tried it yet. I've just scanned it, but it'll be interesting to see how this develops. So again, how do you sort through so many things happening? So I've worked as an advisor to Chonex, and I'm pleased with how they've methodically gone through this process. So today, they're a very different company than they were 3 years ago in how they have gotten the data and the things necessary behind the product to prove the product. And number one is, what field data does the company have? And how many, where, consistency, and what's the win rate? What is the yield increase? What is the return on investment? I'm hearing a lot more from some leading farmers that just getting a yield increase is not where you want to be, but you want to have a return on investment. I mean, you can get yield increases and spend a lot of money for that, but it's really about the ROI. And then nutrient density and quality, the whole food for health movement is certainly gaining steam, and that it's not just about producing yield that's not helping the crop in terms of nutritional density. And so you're seeing a lot of that, just a little bit of that, especially with regenerative folks, having data showing the difference in nutrient density, percent protein, for example, or other factors in farming regeneratively versus farming conventionally. There's a number of companies who are making claims about reduction of chemical fertilizer, and there's some criticism about those studies, because if farmers have been historically adding too much fertilizer and then you stop adding it, is it just the levels that's already in the soil, and then it's not the real effect of the biological? Yes and no. I'm seeing a number of companies truly do have data to be able to significantly reduce fertilizer with their products. And I've seen some good data from Chonex on this as well. What is the science behind the products? How does it work? What's the mode of action? I hear a lot of companies I talk to say, well, it's proprietary. Unless we have an NDA, I'm not going to really tell you what's going on. And I'm like, no, you're not going to say that to a farmer. A farmer has to know what is the science behind the products. Now, talking about bugs in a jug or bathtub brews, there are a lot of products with a lot of microbes that are under criticism for not having the quality or the science, knowing what's going on in those products. I know Chonex does, because they've done interestingly has done a number of taken their product, the biofertilizer, from the manure that's fed with black soldier flies, and then have fermented that biofertilizer, and then brewed it and fermented it, and then measured the consistency of each batch from batch to batch. And I was very skeptical. I said, another bathtub brew. But remarkably, the consistency of the fermentation and the microbes that come out of that, it's remarkably consistent. And I think that's because of the way the black soldier flies actually process the manure. So it's changed my view of that. Not all bathtub brews are just uncharacterized. But if there's a company that says, I have 700 microbes in my product, but I only do, for each batch, I only do PCR on 5, because those 5 are the most important. I mean, like, okay, and I don't check whether there's human pathogens in there, then that blows up my mind. It's crazy. So it's really important to understand what their quality control is on their product. What are they measuring, and why do they have so many microbes in there if they're not needed? And please make sure that they don't have any human pathogens in there. So what about artificial intelligence and machine learning? And it's so much buzzy, but there are real possibilities for these technologies to apply to the biological world. So in discovery of new chemicals or a new drug, a new protein, new peptide, it can really speed up the discovery process. And for a microorganism, now you can get a gene sequence, and then you can use that. If you have a microbe, you can sequence that microbe and then find other microbes related. Or if you want to measure, improve your product or measure your soil sample. So you can now find microbes faster than you could in the past by using mining data from the genomes of microbes. And then fermenting, formulating, optimizing those microbes. AI you can use that to drive those processes. For example, so in the past, you'd have to set up, let's say you're going to improve a microbe product, and you're going to ferment it in a shake flask. You'd have to do hundreds and hundreds of different flasks of different recipes to find the best media recipe. Well, now you can feed that data into a machine learning tool, and it can then predict the next set of experiments you can do without actually having to do all of them. And so it saves you a lot of time and money. The same with formulation. So moving from having to do these big factorial experiments like testing 100 formulations, you can test just a few formulations and then it can predict what are going to be the best ingredients to use. In the field, it's fantastic to be able to look at the images, fly over with a drone and look at the images of what your product does or your practices are doing in the field, and then assessing and analyzing those images. Likewise, when your product is applied on a crop, either in the greenhouse or in the field, and then you can analyze what genes are being turned on in response to that biological, and then develop better products from those data mining tools. Now, there's a current definition of biostimulants now in the United States. It was in the last Farm Bill, and USDA came up with the definition, and then EPA weighed in on it and said there's a biostimulant and there's a plant growth regulator. If it's a plant growth regulator, it has to be registered by EPA. If it's a biostimulant with these claims, it doesn't. So they put out a huge document in the Federal Register that basically prescribes what claims you can put on your label, and so it's very prescriptive. So as a biostimulant or biofertilizer company, you just make sure that you don't make any plant growth regulator claims. Otherwise, you might be asked to have it regulated by the EPA as a plant growth regulator. What are some things that are being regulated as plant growth regulators? Well, if your specific mode of action increases certain hormones in the plant, there are a lot of biostimulants that do that. They've been grandfathered in, but if you're coming with a new one and you want to make that specific claim, it may require as an EPA regulation. So, but here's the definition, and there is a biostimulant coalition in the United States. There's one biostimulant coalition in Europe that's already advanced to where there are now one common EU standard for biostimulants, which is working out very well. Companies that have gone through it are liking it, and we're working on that in the US. Last year, Jimmy Panetta, a California congressman, and his Republican counterpart, Mr. Baird, introduced again the Biostimulant Act, which solidifies this definition, although it was already in the Farm Bill, but we don't have a new Farm Bill yet. And the Farm Bill tasks the U.S. Department of Agriculture to adopt this definition and generate the data for biostimulants and bionutrients biofertilizers to be included in the EQIP program, which allows farmers to get payments for using biologicals that enhance soil health. So this is huge for biologicals. Now, some companies are going on and doing this on their own and paying farmers and getting a third party to certify this program, Indigo, Locus, some others. But we don't like, I mean, that's great, but it would be better not to be on a company by company basis, and would be better to be driven by somebody like USDA. So the APCO is basically the organization that governs the fertilizers and biofertilizers. And they formed a biostimulant committee, and every state voted to make the biostimulant framework, unanimous vote by the states to make it official, to bring the standardization and have one national standard for biostimulants, biofertilizers. Now that that has been established, each state needs to ratify it. California is the first one. And so the rest of the states need to do it, and then it'll become the framework. And so we're really looking forward to having that national framework and hope to basically science up the whole industry like we did with the biopesticides when we created the Biopesticide Industry Alliance, now called the Biological Products Industry Alliance. The Fertilizer Institute jumped in and has companies can get a certified biostimulant to show that they have done certain things to prove the quality of the product. And here's a couple that are on the website now. Corteva was the first to go through a USDA certification process for process verified biostimulant with their Utrisha N product, a nitrogen fixing product. And Terry Stone, who used to be with Corteva, now is going off on his own consulting at the bioproducts industry meeting last year, gave us a talk about how they went through this process. So all of this pointing to ways to science up, improve the quality and perception of a category that has some snake oil image. And we want to see the same sciencing up quality, improving the quality and perception of this whole category like we did for biopesticides. But those are more heavily regulated, so it was a bit easier to do. So moving on from that part, and I'm sure Alan Williams did a great webinar on regenerative. So, and got into the more detail on that. I'm going to get into some of that, but, let's review again. What is soil health? There's a lot of definitions, but no definition of soil health is complete unless you include the fact that it is a vital living ecosystem. And that's the most important part. And a lot of measures historically of soil health have been chemical indicators or physical indicators and are lacking the soil biodiversity indicators. The good news is that we are getting more and more tools to be able to assess soil biodiversity, which is really critical. The Soil Health Institute did a review of all the measures of soil health and published it and put it on their website as to what are the best methods for measuring soil health. So they've done us all a great service to be able to go through all of the different things going on, every private and public study on and method for measuring soil health, and they made their recommendations. So that's really good they did that. So, how do microbes impact soil health is a really intense area of interest because they do dramatically impact soil health. As I said, it's a living system. And so measuring the bacteria, the fungi, and other organisms, protozoa, are really critical. So there's a number of plant growth promoting microbes, and we've probably only discovered a very small fraction of them, but you'll see some recognizable groups in the PGPRs, such as Pseudomonas and Burkholderia, Bacillus, Azotobacter, Serratia, Zoosporidium. And so, when you have a healthy soil, you'll see these genera come up on a regular basis. But of course, a lot that are not common names. And what do? Well, they improve nutrient availability and help the plant uptake nutrients better, and as well as supporting nitrogen cycling, nitrogen fixation. There are other microbes that, such as mycorrhizal fungi and others, that sequester carbon. There's microbes that are biocontrol microbes that can control plant diseases and nematodes. And so all of these working together, leading to higher root and plant health. So just looking at it from a picture way, you've got a number of effects on the root of these microbes in leading to plant growth promotion, induced systemic resistance, enhanced uptake, et cetera, and reducing crop stress. reducing drought stress is a very important role of the microbes as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So the microbiomes of your soil are shaped by the agricultural practices. And part of that agricultural practice is not only what inputs you apply, but your tillage as well as what crop variety. So all of these things are affecting the interaction of the microbiome in the soil and also above ground, which is called the phyllosphere. And why is crop variety so critical? Because microbes and plants are actively signaling each other all the time. Plants are excreting through their roots compounds, several listed here, that are attracting microbes to the roots to do good things for them. And what we're finding out is that a lot of common plant varieties, this was never even thought of. So a lot of your common leading varieties today have lost the ability to signal microbes. Therefore, they have to use a lot more chemical inputs because they don't have those signaling molecules that are attracting the microbes to the roots. So whenever I talk to plant breeders, I say, well, do you check whether your new varieties are signaling, or have you have markers for these marker compounds? And usually not, but they're starting to. So these molecules are starting to be an intense area of study. And in fact, even a company exploiting them like Sound Bio has taken this chemistry, strigolactone chemistry, made them synthetically, applying them in their product to the soil, and then basically tricking the plant into thinking it's a microbe making these compounds. A microbe tricking the microbe into being attracted to the plant. And so is attracting microbes with their synthetically applied strigolactone chemistry. So these plants are making these and attracting especially mycorrhizal fungi, but also bacteria as well. Now, the parasitic weeds have also strega, for example, which is a really bad weed called witchweed in Africa, is also doing the same thing. And so these strigolactones are also attracting parasitic weeds. So there's companies who are using this against the weeds as well. One is called the Toothpick Project, which is a great project in Africa, using a fusarium that is controlling the weed. And here's a great example that was funded by the soybean board, showing you what I'm talking about in breeding. So here's a soybean on the left that has the triggering compounds in it that attracts the mycorrhizae to the roots, and the one on the right is the variety of soybean that doesn't have these triggering compounds, signaling compounds. So this has been done in several crops now. So it's pretty remarkable that if you're a breeder and don't include these signaling compounds in your breeding, then you're really missing the boat now. So why are mycorrhizae so important? Because, and this is data from Groundwork, they're a company that has found a very hardy mycorrhizae from the desert, Israeli desert, very dry desert. So, and they've done a good job of showing and getting the science and showing you that mycorrhizae sequester carbon. They produce glomulin, and so it's a carbon sink. And so one of the companies working on getting carbon credits for farmers for either using applied mycorrhizae, but also, with a product like Chonex's or other biostimulants, bionutrients, that can also attract more mycorrhizae to the roots. So I mentioned that microbes have an influence on drought. And if you want to see what's happening, it's so mind-boggling because every week there's so many papers coming out on what's happening in the microbiome in the soil. And it's hard to keep up, but there's a great journal called the Phytobiomes Journal that has a lot of this, and it's just fantastic. Here's one. The root endophytic microbiome shifts under drought in high-performing sorghum. So what they're saying is that, yeah, there are microbes that help the sorghum resist drought. And even finding out now that certain, again, like I said, crop variety is really critical, the breeding, that there are crop varieties that have bred out the ability of the the crop to attract the right microbes to reduce drought stress. So certain crop varieties are not great in drought. Part of it's because of the microbiome. And then there's papers showing you how the microbes work together. There's some product companies that have products that are single microbes. That's fine. And then there's ones with multiple microbes. Chonex's Bio-Fertilizer, which you're delivering multiple microbes, so you're jump starting, enhancing what's in the soil and can jump start the soil health more quickly. And this is showing you that the microbes work together. Mycorrhizae and bacteria work together, in this case, helping the crop improve its uptake of phosphorus and potassium by corn. There is a great soil biodiversity and health lab at our local UC Davis, where I am, and in Christina Lascano's lab, and she's done a fantastic job of showing the importance of soil microbiome and even what it's having to do with wine grape quality and the concept of terroir affecting our wine quality. Really, really cool. And also the shifts in microbiome and how it affects nematodes, plant parasitic nematodes, and also the effect of organic fertilizers on the soil microorganisms. And that's really important. And then what is happening, why some strawberries are more resistant to bad soil pathogens, and it has to do with the soil microbiome. So for example, one of the papers, strawberry plants recruit microbes to the roots, and the ones that are resistant to the two worst soil-borne pathogens had consistently showed the recruitment of those microbes. And then this is interesting, is that also there were certain varieties that showed a higher abundance of nitrogen-fixing bacteria. And so in some follow-up studies by some other researchers, they found that adding organic fertilizers compared to mineral nitrogen fertilizer changed, and not surprisingly, changed the microbiome, and the recruitment of those microbes actually started actually with the transplants of the tomatoes, in the case with strawberries as well. And so so you can definitely change the microbiome, and data after more and more studies and more data is showing the advantages of organic or biofertilizers in facilitating nitrogen fixation and being able to reduce the amount of fertilizer, synthetic fertilizer you're using. And so there's now we knew it, but now there's the scientific basis for it. There's one with switchgrass, so that switchgrass being used for energy, a plant for bioenergy. And this paper showed that you put on chemical fertilizer and the microbes become lazy. No surprise there. Why would they have to work if there's plenty of nitrogen around? But when there's less nitrogen, then they get to work and they start fixing nitrogen. So lots of science now showing that reducing synthetic fertilizers, using organic biofertilizers are definitely much better for your soil when it comes to nitrogen. And so why use why not just go ahead and improve your soil health through cover crop, minimum tillage, and other things? Yes, that's wonderful. But if you want to accelerate your conversion to a more regenerative state, that's why you would add reputable products that enhance soil microbes or shift the microbiome for all the reasons I mentioned. And companies have to have the data on what their products are doing to soil health and microbiome now. So, um, so there are companies, a number of them, and this is not the full universe, that you send off your soil and they'll give you a biodiversity dashboard, as well as tell you all the different microbes that you have in your soil, and very, very wonderful data showing you before and after application of a crop input, or just simply you have a bad section of your field, or something's going on and just want to get a baseline characterization. There are more and more of these studies showing that some of the things we apply in terms of the chemical pesticides are definitely affecting the soil microbe communities. And sometimes they do recover, but it's certainly important here to understand that whether it's a chemical or biological, asking the company if they have data on what their product does to the soil microbiome is really important. What happened to my, that's weird. Okay. Something on my screen, just like some weird drawing went on. There it goes. Okay. So wrapping up, I'll just talk about what, and then we can get into questions. What do farmers think about these things? Well, an AgWeb poll showed I need to know more. I see potential, but I need to know more. So you've got 41 plus 35, and 21, I don't know. So only 4% said they saw no benefit. This is for row crop farmers in the US. There's huge opportunity here for biological companies and practitioners, agronomists who are advising farmers to really educate here, because every single survey shows the exact same thing. Do you use biologicals? Okay, half say yes, half say no. Okay, and here it breaks it down by whether it's bio-fertilizers. Here it was 37 or 28% more were using they're using biopesticide microbials. But look at the comments from the farmers. Look into it, but I haven't figured out how to best use them. Need to understand better how to fit them in our operation. Okay, but I do find when timed correctly, bioproducts work just as good, if not better. That theme is seen in other surveys. For example, Strativation just popped out their latest one. Great data. And they asked, what do you like best about your experience with biologicals? Yield boost. That always comes, of course. And then next, fertilizer efficiency, soil health, plant health comes after that. But yield is always what the farmers want, particularly in row crops. But what don't they like? Cost, extra work. Okay, difficult to measure. Okay, that's not surprising. Cost from the standpoint of not always on a acre per acre basis, but sometimes you might have to have more applications. At the end of the day, though, the cost, there are a lot of costs in improvement in biodiversity, reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and all these other things that are never measured that don't go into the cost. So the externalities, I would say. And then these are non-users. Okay, why aren't you using? Not proven, lack of knowledge. That lack of knowledge over and over and over again comes up. So we have this education to do to improve the uptake of biologicals. Here are, just like that other poll I showed you, that one was fruits and vegetables. This one's row crops. When you use them, how do you rate them? And they always rate them very high once they learn how to use them. Okay. So again, it's behooves all the practitioners and manufacturers in having that education and learning. So they don't see that this is just a snake oil category. Again, here we go. Just about every survey shows about half the farmers understand and half don't. So it's a big opportunity, but also a big challenge to bring that education up. So just to summarize again, what we know. Very critically, plants recruit microbes. This is crop variety dependent to their rhizosphere. So picking starts with picking the variety, but the problem is a lot of breeders don't know because they never tested what crop varieties recruit microbes. But this is very critical, starting from the plant. So they recruit the microbes from the available pools in the soil. If there aren't enough good microbes from that available pool, then you can add in a biostimulant, a biofertilizer to improve that and accelerate the process of that recruitment. And then too much fertilizer makes nitrogen-fixing microbes lazy. Now, there's the science to back that. Microorganisms in the root zone, of course, seems obvious, but now we have the science to prove it as well. That change depending on the type of fertilizer, whether it's a biological fertilizer or whether it's a chemical fertilizer or even a chemical pesticide. And data from multiple companies, from biomakers, from Chonex, from lots of companies, showing that you can increase microbial diversity and shift the functional groups positively. So I've seen the data from Chonex's product that shows the shift in increasing the biocontrol microbes, increasing the microbes that are sequestering carbon, increasing the microbes that are nitrogen fixation. And so you can have hard data showing that, and you should, if you're a manufacturer, have this data. And so based on the number of years that I've seen from the various companies, including Chonex, of adding microbial products to the soil to increase that acceleration of that recruitment and soil health improvement, that 5 to 7 years is generally what it takes to move to regenerative, fully regenerative. But you can shorten that to maybe 3 years by adding good microbes to your soil. So, a lot of farmers don't want to use crop inputs, and that's fine. And you can do it other ways, but it takes longer doing it that way, and certainly, it'll be less cost by not adding a purchased input. But you can accelerate that process by adding your products, that good products, to the soil. So some resources: Biological Products Industry Alliance covers bionutrients, biofertilizers, biostimulants, and biopesticides. We in California have a Healthy Soils Initiative. There's grant monies for that. I don't know how much grant money is going to be available anymore from the USDA and NRCS anymore. I mean, there are farmers now who have had their equip payments cut off in the latest fiasco of grants being stopped. So hopefully that'll settle down, and the farmers will be able to get their equip payments. And in the future, that will include payments. It will at some point include payments for biologicals, reputable biologicals that can enhance soil health and reduce greenhouse gas emission. ATRA is a great resource they do lots of webinars on soil health. The American Society of Agronomy has lots of free webinars on soil health and biostimulants as well. Soil Health Institute, I mentioned, has assessed all methods of measuring soil health and has published their results. And then the biggest regenerative operation that's helping farmers convert to operation with very well-known and famous farmers, regenerative farmers, Understanding Ag. So with that, I will stop and take questions.
Awesome, Pam. Thank you so much. We've got a couple questions in the chat. I'm going to take these in order. And
Okay.
If folks have further questions, just please put them in the chat, and we'll get to them. First, and again, if I don't get your question right, feel free to sort of jump in. But Charles asked, Pam, what about cover crops complemented with biologicals? Can including biologicals boost or accelerate the effect of cover crops? What are your thoughts there?
Yes. And so choosing the cover crop and the cover crop variety, it's just like the crop, the actual crop itself. There's that interplay between microbes and the type of cover crop. So, interestingly, I have seen less data on published data on that interaction, but it is a similar interaction that Yes, and you can improve cover crop and also have that synergy of the cover crop and the microbes. But I haven't seen as much data on that as with the particular crop. Yes.
Thanks, Pam. And that's a great question, Charles. Marco asked a question next. I guess to the point you had brought up before, how do you improve the consistency of efficacy of biologicals or biostimulants, biofertilizers?
Yeah.
You talked about that inconsistency,
Yeah.
and how can that be improved to improve adoption by farmers?
Yeah. The consistency is mentioned over and over again. And that is, I would say, behooves the company to understand when their product works and when it doesn't. So what does that take? It just takes the number of trials. Okay. So and measuring under what are the conditions of that trial? What type of soil? What's the soil moisture? And so now that we have data tools, to help us do that. Like for example, another company I advise is Illicit Plant, and it's very different from Chonex. It's spraying a plant sterile compound on the foliarly and then helps the crop resist drought. It doesn't work all the time, but they have enough trials now to show when exactly it has to be applied. It has to be applied precisely at a particular time of phenology of the crop. And it's same with other biologicals, microbial. It's application timing, dose rate, number of applications, soil type, soil moisture. So yeah, this just takes money. It takes money for a company to generate these data, but that's what you have to do. And then be able to be honest. I see a lot of companies historically say, this can work in all kinds of conditions and you use it wherever. Well, no. So you'd have to know the very specific use instructions is what you need to do. And it really advise on, okay, be honest. I've seen it not work in these situations. And that just takes data generation, really.
Great, Pam. Thank you. Grant, next question in line
Oh, I'm
is,
going to mention one thing on that question too. So there will be published papers from universities who will do a few tests and then publish that certain products don't work. And there's been some pretty high profile papers on that. That drives me crazy because a university who says I did 2 trials with some nitrogen fixing bacteria and it didn't work. And then they published that and they've done it in 10 states and each state was 3 trials or 2 trials and they only used 3 reps. I'm sorry. Those even though they're done, by reputable academics, they're not good enough.
right. And that's a good point, Pam. I think Grant talked about this next. What strategies have you found are most effective for educating the public about the science behind bioproducts? I guess this means the wider public that's out there.
That's interesting because I'm not sure that's been necessary. It's definitely necessary from the big food company. So who interfaces with the public. So the Biological Products Industry Alliance and ABI, I forgot to mention up there, the IBMA is the International Biocontrol Manufacturers Association, but it also includes biostimulants and biofertilizers. Both of those trade groups, IBMA and BPIA, have had consumer product companies, Nestle, Walmart, even Cisco, food delivery, a number of those at the table. And I think that's where the education should start. Trying to educate the general populace about this is it's too big. But I do my own poll when I'm on the plane and people ask me what I do and such. And it's very easy to, when you say, there's good microbes and bad microbes. There's salmonella, but there's also good microbes in your yogurt. Oh, and they get it. Probiotics, they immediately get it. Yeah.
Got it. That's a great point. Victor asked the next question. I think obviously great talk. Agreed, Victor. So thank you for saying that.
Too much information. Yeah, there's one. You're right. I'd
Yeah,
like to
yeah.
rewatch it again. I'm sorry. I see within the comments. This is true. Guilty as charged.
Yeah, and what should the final consumer do to make the most informed and accurate decision when choosing these products? I mean, you mentioned some of these approving agencies. You know, how could folks, kind of sort through the hundreds of products quickly?
I would say going back to my the consumer or the farmer.
I'm going to assume a more sophisticated, so like the farmer. Yeah,
Okay. So yeah, it starts with how much data does this company have? And looking at that data, and like I said, is it 100 trials? How many reps? What's the consistency? What's the win rate? If it's just small plots, little small university plots with a single row, and 4 reps of those. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not the whole story. You really have to have on farmers' fields, and bigger acreages when you're certainly taking these things to yield. So having the small plot data in addition to on-farm demos and larger trials is really critical. So I mean, I really think this slide is what
yeah,
is necessary. What data and science are behind the product?
that's great. A few more questions here, which is great. We'll try to get to as many of them as possible. Simon asked, have you seen situations where biological products actually cancel each other out? Is that something that farmers need to worry about? Or, are there situations where that happens?
That biologicals cancel each other out?
Yeah, yeah.
I have not seen that yet. I have seen them enhancing each other, but I have not seen a cancellation yet.
I suppose to add to that, Pam, though, like if you are kind of farming conventionally using insecticides, herbicides, and using biologicals, maybe you could comment a bit on where farmers need to be careful there.
Okay, yes, it depends on the program, but I have seen a lot of biologicals and have done thousands of trials in my past life of chemicals with biopesticides and showing how biopesticides can improve the yield and quality of the program when incorporating in. And sometimes it's just adding on top. And that's times a lot of biological companies will just add it on top to the farmer's already or existing fertilizer program. But sometimes you can drop down and then measure the results, both ways. In both ways, I've seen them work very well. But I have only very rarely seen a antagonism, actually.
It's helpful.
Yeah. I
Uh,
noticed a question about True Solum here.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm also an advisor to that company, so I'll disclose that. But they make algae indoors, they grow algae indoors, collect the water, and then apply it to the crop. And I would consider that a biostimulant because I don't think there's actual NPK in or micronutrients in the water. And so it would be considered more of a biostimulant. And so it's that product, since we also did the microbiome analysis, is enhancing the plant's ability to take up phosphorus and other micronutrients. So it's shifting the microbiome, like Chonex's product, but StrongSoil. But StrongSoil is actually delivering NPK, calcium, so it's both a biostimulant and a biofertilizer. Yeah. Whereas True Algae is a great product, but it's more of a biostimulant.
Great. A couple more questions, and again to the points to everyone here. We've recorded this, and we'll be sharing the recording and slides if that's all right, Pam, afterwards.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You can send me my slide deck if you want as well. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Athena asked a great question, which is around, using microbes to restore contaminated soils. Have you seen examples where that specifically has been done?
Yes. I've not done it myself, but I do know a number of companies who are working on that front and have some very interesting data on being able to microbes to actually break down various toxic chemicals. And I know a company that's actually has microbes that break down PFAS. So yes, microbes can do just about anything you want them to do. There is no question in my mind. My current company, we're paid a grant. We were asked to find a solution to control burrowing shrimp that are invading oyster beds in Washington. And this is a bizarre project. In 7 months, we found microbes that kill shrimp. And so, it just shows you can target what you want to find and you'll find it. So if you want to break down some toxins in soil, there are microbes to do that, no question. And there are companies working on that.
Amazing. I've got time for one more question. And again, many people saying thank you for this. Can you talk about how kind of you touched a little bit about soil measurement technologies, and like sort of biomakers, et cetera. What about kind of drone technology for assessing crop vigor and soils? Is there any kind of evolution in this space?
Absolutely. Because you can feed those images into machine learning tools now and get patterns. A lot of companies are using that to sort through like they might have 4 biostimulants they're developing or different products or whatever, or they're trying different rates or whatever, some different practice with their biostimulant or bionutrient. And those images are very valuable. Yeah, I've done that myself and had drones fly over we had a product that was reducing drought stress. It was very useful. And since you have such really good machine learning tools now, that's going to be a valuable tool to assessing what's happening. And it's really, if you're a farmer, you want to see what's happening in field and not have to wait to measure that yield. So anytime you can have an in-field measurement of what is going on through a drone imaging, it really helps in the season instead of waiting till the end. You need the yield data, but it's great to have something in between. Yeah.
And that's excellent. Out of respect for your time and everyone's time, this has been incredibly informative. I know for many of us, we'll have to rewatch it.
I'm sorry. I know. This is a guilty. Always try to pack in too much stuff.
Well, we have the beauty of recordings, and so we will be posting this talk again. So if folks want to rewatch it, excellent insights. So thank you for that. And again, Pam, thank you for your advice to Chonex as we continue to develop StrongSoil. So with that, thanks so much everyone for joining, and thank you again, Pam, and enjoy the rest of your holidays. Take care.
Thank you all for attending.
Great, thank you.
Bye.